One thing I do know is when you have faith in God, you are not controllable. I changed my mind about God. I was wrong. I used to have a lot of judgment about religion and Christianity, thinking like, it's not bad, but it's like, dude, that's so outdated.
But what I would change in this video, JP is known as a conservative YouTuber and comedian, mostly known for his skit comedy that he has done throughout COVID and really gaining a lot of popularity in recent years due to political controversy. You might recognize him from some of these skits.
That salad's totally grossing me out.
As a Tesla owner, my self-identity is wrapped up in my car.
Now, I wanted to do a video on JP because recently he just put out a video talking about how his views about God have changed. In it, he breaks down all the reasons for why he believes in God, what he used to believe, and more. All right, real quick, before you jump into this video, guys, do me a favor. If you like this type of content and you want to see part 2 to this or a continuation of these reactions, drop a like in the comment section. If we can get 15 likes, we'll drop part 2 here because this is a 30-minute video. So I want to make sure that we cover all of it. So if you enjoy it, make sure to leave that like there. That lets me know that you want this, and I'll drop the next part to follow. But let's jump into it.
I changed my mind about God. I was wrong. So accordingly, in this video, I want to share with you what I used to believe, what I believe now, and what made me change my mind along the way. And also, very importantly, I want to share with you a few thoughts of mine that I have that will help us bring more God not only into our lives, but also the world around us, which seems like it needs a lot more God right now. Because I don't know about you, but living in a world where Satan reigns and you and I and our families have to suffer the consequences doesn't really feel appealing to me. And also, quick disclaimer, this video is not intended to be a comedy video. And if that offends you, pray about it. So what I used to think about God that I now say, yeah, I was wrong about. I used to have a lot of judgment about religion and Christianity, thinking like, it's not bad, but it's like, dude, that's so outdated and like, get with it. Why are you religious when you could be spiritual? And along with that, I became very inundated in the spiritual movement. So like spirituality, not religion, like the evolved thinkers are spiritual, not religious. They're also evolved enough to always have to tell you that they're spiritual, not religious. That was me. And while I was in there, I will honestly say I got a lot of benefit from spiritual teachings, like different teachers, different books, different philosophies. I got a lot of benefit from that. But when I look back, I can see I was excluding some amazing traditional Christian values, beliefs of God, and ways of connecting with God that I now really value. But
all right, well, let's stop right there because he just said a ton of different things. If you guys caught what he was saying there, he said that he, like many people in today's world, believed that Christianity or religion itself maybe wasn't wrong, but he did judge, his words, he did judge Christians because of the exclusivity of Christianity, of things like believing that there is only one way to God. There is only one way to really know God. And so he said, again, he's speaking from that frame of mind of people who go, hey, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious, right? I might do yoga. I might believe in crystals. I might believe that there is a God or many gods, but I don't really know. And I don't look to a religion, or I don't look to the Bible to tell me who God is. I just really filter it all through my own system and my own self. Again, this is very new age, very much of how a lot of us give into what we call idolatry here, and we make God into an image that is fitting to us, that is fair or just according to us, that believes all the same things we believe, and so we never have to be challenged here. But I love what he said, is he said and while he learned some stuff, like sure, looking inwards or just pondering and thinking about God, there is general revelation. There's ways where we can go, okay, yeah, there is a way, or there is beauty in the world. This couldn't have all just happened by chance. There's something to be gained there, but we can't gain the full truth. And that's where he's starting to say, where he realized there were some things from the Christian tradition, there were some things that were rooted scripturally to help him connect more to God that at the time he didn't know he needed. But now as he begins his faith journey, sees that spiritualism was just void, that it was just empty. And so he needed to look for more. And that's where he leans into Christianity. But let's keep going and see what he says about this here.
Out of what I would call spiritual arrogance, I was excluding them, just judging them to be, oh, that's old, outdated stuff. And like, nah, y'all need to get spiritual like me. And with that, I didn't believe in the immense power of prayer. I used to think, well, prayer's probably a good thing. It'll maybe give you a more positive mood, a more positive outlook. But I didn't truly believe in the power of prayer, where people are directly asking God for God's support and then receiving that support from God.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't really believe that it actually happened. And in a minute, I'll get to directly telling you what my beliefs about God now are. But first, what changed me? What happened? What I see that changed my mind?
This should be good.
One observation I've had over the past 3 years, especially, it's hashtag pandemic. Over the past 3 years, I've found myself accidentally getting more Christian. Like without even intentionally trying, like setting out on a mission, like, hey, I want to become more Christian. It's just been effortlessly happening for me.
Wow. So he just said himself, it wasn't like he was searching for God in and through this. It just kind of accidentally happened as he was doing his thing, as he was getting more involved, becoming more mainstream. But through that, he ended up coming to hear and know God. Let's see what he's talking about here.
Now, I don't think I'm unique there because I've seen a lot of people and I've heard a lot of people telling me similar stories. So I asked the question, why are people getting more Christian without even trying? Here's what I believe to be true about that. The presence of evil and Satan that evil emanates from has never been more obvious, at least in my lifetime. The past 3 years, evil isn't hiding anymore. It's coming at us through authoritarianism, movements, people, groups, companies, governments, trying to invade our minds, invade our God-given free will. So as that's become more obvious, I think there's a natural polarity that happens. If you're not someone who's willing to do the devil's bidding, if you're not someone who's willing to propagate evil, then there's a natural occurrence that happens when you're in the presence of evil, you polarize to the other extreme. Like you may not even be consciously aware of it, but the presence of evil makes you lean away. And then, therefore, what direction are you leaning towards? That would be the direction of God, certainly the opposite of evil, the opposite of Satan. So I think that's seeing the presence of evil. That's why I've just accidentally been getting more Christian, why so many other people are. Because right now, I think the evil that's in this world is doing a great service of driving a lot of people to find God in ways that they previously hadn't.
So I like what he's saying here. I think I would switch up the language a little bit. And again, we're going to get to what does he actually believe? Is he full on Christian now? It's sounding more and more like it. His shirt says got God, right? But what I would change in this language is he's putting a lot of the emphasis on the individual who's in the midst of the world and them seeing the evil of today, which I agree. Like, I think there's always been evil. There's always been sin in the world ever since Adam and Eve. But I think now we are so much more aware of it because of things like the internet. We are so much more connected to what is happening around the world. What I would say and what I would change is it's God using that to draw people back to him. That God is using the evil and the wickedness in the world and the free will man has and the evil that they're doing to draw people back to himself and to the saving work of the gospel. And so that's the only part I'd kind of tweak there. I wouldn't want to give too much authority and agency to just evil itself being the one to do this. But I get what he's saying and I get the heart of it. I think he's spot on for the most part. I think, like I said, because of the internet and other things, we could easily see this in the world. But let's keep going.
And also specifically, we could say, hey, there is an attempt to bring communism all over the world, certainly in the United States. We don't call it that, but it is that. And it's happening all over the world. And there's a reason why communists have their number one objective to disconnect people from God, where they ban religions. And of course, right now it's more like discouraging it, shaming it. But with full-on communism, they ban religion. Why is that? Because they don't want people having faith in a real higher power. So if you can get people to disconnect from God, if you get people to disconnect from the teachings of God and the ways of God, the belief in God, then those communists get to be your higher power. And honestly, they make a crappy higher power. They don't even make good fertilizer. That's not a good substitute for God. But for people who want to control you, which is what evil is, anytime someone tries to control you in a way that's not in your best interest, that's what I call evil. So for the force of evil, that is communism, wanting to control you, they realize people who have a faith in a real higher power, God, they're not controllable. So we have to become their higher power. We need them to depend on us, not depending on their faith in God, but that we need them to depend on us, need us, be obedient to us. Or else communism just doesn't work. And even when that happens, it still doesn't work, but nonetheless. Now, there's a lot I don't know, but
So it's interesting because, again, he relates a lot of this back to what he knows, aka his lens and filter is through politics. And so he's equating evil to communism and things like that. And listening to this, I think of things in the stories like in the Bible of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the story in Daniel of them bowing down to King Nebuchadnezzar, or if they don't, get thrown into the furnace, right? You guys know this story, hopefully, found in Daniel here. And so we see this, and it's true. There's parts of what he's saying is true. Again, some of the filtering of it, I think, and even the definition of evil, I think it's definitely could be a part of what he's saying here, what's not in our best interest. We see that with Satan, right? He does that in the garden as well. So definitely a part of it. I think it's not the whole, but definitely a part of the definition of evil. And again, he could be a really young Christian, so I don't want to discourage any of it. I think a lot of this is insightful because, like he said, the idea of evil being someone pulling you away from what's in your best interest. We see that in the garden with Adam and Eve, right? Satan telling them, the serpent telling them, just eat of this fruit. You should. Like, it'll be God. He puts doubt in their mind that God doesn't really care about them. God doesn't really see them, and they do it. And it's not in their best interest, right? So we could see this, and it could be applicable to scriptures, and could be in a way framed in that way. We want to always be cautious and check the perspective of how we're reading things into the Bible. But I don't think he's wrong. I don't think he's wrong in a lot of this. So let's keep going and see what else he says here.
One thing I do know is when you have faith in God, you are not controllable. You're not. The fear-mongering, the fear of death that ultimately all fear-mongering points to, like, hey, the climate's changing, the climate's going to kill you. Hey, look at this disease. Look at the death toll on the bottom of CNN. All that fear-mongering really preys on the fear of death that people have.
It's true.
But here's the deal. When you believe in God, you also therefore believe in the afterlife. You believe in heaven. So you don't
You
really
believe in God's
fear
sovereignty?
death the way you fear
Right.
death if you believe there is no God. Why? Because you're like, well, okay, if I die, which I don't want to, but if I do, okay, I'm in heaven. That's actually beautiful. So the brave, bold freedom statement of it's better to die on your feet than live on your knees becomes something that people of faith will live by. That's why communists, globalists, anyone who wants to control you purposely tries to disconnect you from God, because God's way is freedom. Evil constricts, God frees. God gives us free will. That's our expression of freedom. That's God's way. Communists don't like that. Globalists don't like that because God's way makes you uncontrollable to them. And we can see that tyrannical authoritarians attempt to disconnect people from their faith in God. It's certainly at play now. Now, statistically, 50 years ago, 98% of Americans believed in God. Today, statistically, just 81% of Americans believe in God.
And even
then
that number
from
is...
a political perspective, it's actually interesting to see that just 64% of Democrats believe in God, while 92% of Republicans believe in God. And of course, right now, as it stands, The evil, the satanic ways, the communist ways tend to be much more abundant on the Democrat side. So it's not too surprising that just 62% of Democrats believe in God. And specifically, we see the coercion to disconnect people from God playing out in all kinds of propaganda. The gender ideology propaganda, where they're attempting to get people to believe that God made mistakes, which is a fascinating way to basically get people to not believe in God, because if you believe in God, you probably believe God doesn't make too many mistakes. Like, hey, look at this junk between my legs. I'm the wrong gender. So they try to teach us your mind, what you want. You are right, God's wrong. God made a mistake. Dude, you're totally right about you should be a woman. God made a mistake, so, there probably is no God. But when we see all this gender ideology stuff that hinges on that principle that if there probably was a God, he wouldn't be screwing up your gender now, would he? We see that coming at our kids all the time. And amongst other devious intentions behind that kind of ideology, I believe one of the principal ones at its core is to disconnect people from their faith in God. So here's what I believe now.
All right, so if you guys catch that, he kind of combines a lot of the spirituality, like his understanding of evil, again, like we've been saying, kind of rooted in government, and he sees evil in and through how government has reigned before. I want to be careful here when it comes to not becoming like a Christian nationalist, right, where America has it right and America's God's chosen people, because we don't actually see that in the Bible. If anything, it's Israel, and the Israelites are the people of God, and we have been grafted into that because of Jesus Christ. And so, yes, we are part of the people of God. And God can and does give us free will, free agency to be able to make decisions and make choices here. And so we want to be careful to not polarize. And he's, again, coming from a political background where so much is polarized based off of what you believe on one subject can totally move you from here to here or from here to here. And so, and I think as Christians, it would be wise for us to not play into that a ton, but to just see that God desires that all would come to a saving faith and understanding of him, that while these are important topics to talk about, things like gender dysphoria or, LGBTQ issues, whatever it may be, those are important conversations to have. And yes, to give a clear understanding. And yes, there's some of these side effects of claiming these policies are right, to be able to say like, well, maybe there isn't a God, or if there is, he made mistakes. All of that is valid points and conversations to be able to be had in the church with people who are wrestling through these issues, good conversations to talk about and point back to scripture. Again, he hasn't really done that. We're about to see what he actually believes, but just things I would want to kind of clarify and say, hey, don't get caught up in separating people as good and evil, right? There is evil in the world, but the reality is all of us are wicked and evil and have deceitful hearts. So the picture that he somewhat paints, I would just want to be really cautious of, because yes, the people of God are the people of God, but not because we're these holy, perfect saints. It's because we know how broken and wicked and sinful and evil we are, that we need a savior. And it's only because of who Jesus Christ is and what he's done on the cross, what we're about to celebrate with Good Friday and Easter Sunday. It's only because of that do we now get to stand blameless before God.